How creative would you like to be with your photography? Because you are the main person who can decide that. And would you like to get much more fun out of your photography? What we're going to talk about today in this brief video is how you can set your camera up to be exactly what you would like it to be. Because there are all sorts of different options that you can actually look at. All those PASM little dials and things like that. We're going to talk about that. It's not a long video, it's 10, 11 minutes, and it will give you a very good idea of how you should think about setting up your camera to do the kind of thing and take the kind of images that you would like it to do. So let's get started. Auto to manual mode. So for many people, when they start out, you can hear people will say, you should aim to be on manual because manual is where pro photographers are, etc., etc. Yes and no. You must do what you want to do. And manual is not perfect, and maybe you don't even want to get as far as manual. Let's go through the various options that you have actually got, because they're quite fun. To start off with, let's look at auto. This is the dial on top of your camera. Auto does everything for you. The camera will decide exposure, it will decide shutter speed, focus, it'll do everything for you, and it'll take a pretty reasonable picture. But it means you have no input whatsoever into that image. The camera will do its best to interpret the data that it picks up and say, this is what I want to do, and this is how we're going to do it. But the problem is, it does a pretty good job most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. Like you want to take this particular picture of flowers, beautiful flowers, and auto thinks that's maybe a bit bright, so it makes your picture look like that. So, and that's not what you want. So you would prefer to have some form of control in terms of how your camera takes the pictures, unless of course you're totally happy with auto. If you're totally happy with auto, perfect, have fun. But if you want to get more out of your photography, we need to look at the next step, which is really going into one of the so-called camera modes. You've got an automatic mode or scene modes, different manufacturers call them different things, which are really presets that decide how the camera should take that particular picture. And then we're going to talk about the so-called semi-automatic modes, where you have your own input and then the camera helps you. So let's have a look at the first one, which of course is scene. When you select scene, or whatever your particular camera manufacturer calls it, it has predetermined settings for different scenes. For example, it'll have something for portrait, something for landscape, different types of landscape, party, sunset, all sorts of different things, and you select what you would like to take, what picture you would like to be taking. If you've got a smartphone, it'll also have all sorts of scene modes. In fact, sometimes too many. So what you do is you select that mode, and the camera will set itself up to take that kind of picture. It'll sort out all the apertures, shutter speeds, etc. And for example, in portrait mode, look at this, if you select portrait mode, it will blur the background just slightly, which is very good creatively. That's just using portrait mode. It'll automatically blur the background. Or maybe you want to select landscape, and landscape will give you the aperture setting that gives you in focus from front to back, just like this. Else you're going to choose speed, and it'll give you freeze things like this. All these different modes are good, but if your photography is based on using this type of mode, you're not really going to learn anything about photography. You'll just go click and take the picture, and sometimes it'll be really good, but sometimes you'll just wonder, maybe I could have done it just a little bit better. So you've got a large and confusing range of modes, and camera manufacturers are just adding more and more. Like you can have baby by moonlight, baby by artificial light, baby by natural light, etc., etc. You don't want to get too involved. But because there's so many modes, and if you decide you would like to go the mode route, decide maybe 2 or 3, like portrait, landscape, that you would use frequently, and make sure you can turn those on quickly so it just becomes part of your photography flow. But don't get mode gridlock. And then you get automatic modes, as we've said, and now we go on to semi-automatic modes, which really are a great help. I'm going to start off with program. And program really is super auto. Program will sort out the exposure for you. It'll sort out the aperture and shutter speed. And you can do everything else. You can play with ISO, you can play with compensation, you can play with white balance. So you start to become involved in what you're actually doing. But you're still sort of stuck because program looks after two main things. Different manufacturers call them different things. Some have AV, TV, others call them but you would know because you'd have a look at the instruction book. So let's leave program on one side for the moment. It's quite a good first step, but it does have limitations. Shutter priority. If you select shutter priority, you control the speed of the shutter. And we'll talk about what that means. The camera will sort out the aperture and the exposure. So you can do a lot because you can decide what you would like the shutter speed to be. And you don't have to worry about exposure. So when you want to take pictures that you would like to freeze the action, shutter priority is really a good one to get because you're talking about freezing the action. Or also at the other end of the scale, you can talk about taking slow motion, and you would need to use a tripod to take images like this where you can slow the shutter right down and you get the smooth water. That's shutter priority. Then we get to aperture priority. Aperture priority obviously is where you select the aperture and the camera will sort out the shutter speed. So what you do, because the key point really is that aperture controls area of focus. And you want to be able to control what's in focus and what's not in focus. And that's really, really important. So your first step is when you're taking an image in aperture priority is you decide what you would like to be in focus and you set the aperture accordingly. Depth of field is fantastic. It's a fantastic creative tool, which is why many photographers use aperture priority all the time, because it gives you instant control of the depth of field. Just like that, you just change the aperture and you get amazing depth of field. And so you need to decide shutter priority or aperture priority. And then you get to, obviously, manual, which we're going to talk about. But when you're using the first two settings, you need to keep a weather eye on the reciprocal setting. If you're in aperture priority, just keep an eye on the shutter speed to make sure it doesn't go somewhere you'd not like it to be. And likewise, when you're using shutter priority, keep an eye on the aperture to make sure it's going to give you the depth of field that you actually need. Talk about manual. The camera does nothing. You do everything. You tell it what to do and how to do it. Personally, I use manual for certain settings. For example, if you're wanting to take images like this in low light, difficult light, manual is fantastic because it gives you full control over everything. And you can look after it and you can make sure you get this type of image. But apart from that, I personally don't use manual. I use aperture priority 95% of the time. And I find aperture priority is fantastic. It gives me everything I need to know and to do. So think about it. Try these different modes for yourself and see how they work. But think about manual, particularly for low light. Because with manual you can control, you can have that, you can make it look like that, you can make it look like that, because you've got complete control of everything that you're doing. And that's important. Think about what mode you would like to use with your camera. Experiment with them, play with them, because one of the important things about having your camera is play with it. Try all the different settings and see what it actually does. You're not going to break anything. The only time you can break something with a camera is if you've got interchangeable lenses and you force something in when it doesn't want to go. But otherwise, just have fun. Think about what you're doing. take the picture, see what had happened, see what the different modes do, because the more you play with your camera, the more you're going to enjoy your camera, because it's going to give you lots of different things that you can actually do. That's what you want to do. So that's photography for beginners, auto to manual mode. Have a look at the bottom right-hand corner. Subscribe is good. If you subscribe, you'll get taken to all the different videos we have done talking about photography, and particularly for beginners. And when I say beginners, I don't just mean beginners. We talk about anybody who's interested enough in their photography that they'd like to keep going. So thank you for taking the time, and I hope to see you back here in one of our other videos. Thank you.